it takes experience to be able to control yourself. The same goes with leaders. So the more experience you get, so more you can control yourself in the situation. For instance, I train in a way that when I have high stress or high pressure, I'm thinking what to do. So I physically go to train somewhere really hard. I might go to run stairs and just push myself and hear my thoughts that what's the moment when I start losing the focus, when I'm losing the concentration, when my kind of excuses start to happen. It can be that, hey, you have a bit of flu, that don't push yourself too much, or your left knee is now in pain, or to remember that you didn't eat so well. I call this a mental intelligence. I wrote in Forbes an article about that. So how to control these self-doubt moments and take them in as coaches, that, hey, this is the weak point of you now. What do you do with that? And then I run again and ask, okay, now let's deal with that. And so then you learn to control those moments, and physically and mentally, and just push yourself through and be your person.
This is Sparta!
Welcome back to Spartan Leadership. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick, and this is your podcast for leadership, impact, and inspiration. Today will be no different. I'm excited. We got a guest calling in from Finland, 8-hour time difference. So you can see it's dark where he's at. It's just dark in our studio because it's dark in our studio, but it is fully sunny out here, but it is not where he's at. So let me get our guest introduced here. I'm honored to sit down with Aslak de Silva, a world champion, martial artist turned multinational CEO. Aslak is the former CEO of Selfie Store, a European leader in intelligent vending machines serving 20 plus countries, and the former CEO of the Nordic Business Forum, where he brought in leaders like Americans Barack Obama, former President George Clooney, and Steve Wozniak to the stage, the legendary Woz. He's competed in nearly 100 full contact fights, and he's still got his brains to share with us today after that. Won a martial arts world title and now brings that same discipline into the boardroom. He's a Forbes Business Council member, keynote speaker across more than 10 countries, and the author of The Black Belt in Leadership, a book that translates lessons from the dojo into frameworks for CEOs and executives. So his journey is more than just business. It's about composure under pressure, building sustainable systems for success, and leading with clarity. I can't wait to dig in today, Aslak. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks just for having me. I'm honored to be here, and thanks for, even if the time difference is quite big, so we managed to get the time to talk. So I'm happy.
That's right. Technology nowadays allows us to do that. So it's awesome to be here. So I want to start. You know, this martial arts background is a really interesting one. I've got several friends that compete and practice jiu-jitsu now, and they're all, it seems to be all the rage in the U.S. now. I don't know if that was the onset of the UFC or what or the discipline that it really teaches, but the world fascinates me because I grew up playing other sports. I never got into it myself. The only combat sports I did was boxing for a couple years. And that was after I gave up football, and I evidently still like getting hit in the head or something. But you've practiced since you were 12 years old, and went on to become a world champion. I'm curious, what lessons did you learn early that have stuck with you as the leader you've become today?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So I was 12 when I started. So of course, I have to say that I got into fights before I started my martial arts career. So that was kind of a good motivation to learn something, that you don't get beat up in those moments. But I mean, everything started from like understanding a white belt is when you start. So you have a white belt on, and maybe when you go to the trainings, you actually believe that you know something, but quite quickly you learn that you're not that good. And then you kind of have to be humble, follow the orders, have the discipline, and then also understand, I mean, not all the techniques are natural to you. So you feel awkward when you try them out. You might feel sometimes that this is not for me, but you just have to push yourself through that. And then comes the fighting part with full contact fight. So then when you enter the ring, before that you might be pumping up your self-esteem before that I can do everything, and then the fight starts and you get punched in your face and you feel the pain and you lose all your courage and everything. So I think it's a really good lessons for anybody to learn how to control yourself in those situations when everything can change in a second. And then you have to just kind of overcome your fears, build up your confidence, stay calm, and find your chance to win the fight. So when you do that 100 times, so then you kind of learn a lot from yourself. So I think that's kind of is the ground for me when I then at the age of 27 started my professional career outside of martial arts. So when my CV was blank, so I was used to that already. So it didn't matter that I started from the entry level position. So I just applied the same kind of mindset, the same discipline to work. And then I got to places later on and succeeded in sales and in leading people as well. So I mean, I believe that's kind of my life philosophy nowadays that I learned since I was 12 in the martial arts dojos there.
Well, it's really interesting because there's so many parallels there, but I feel like it, for most, especially men, is easier at 12 years old to walk in and be humble than it is at 27 or 37 or 47. But what have you experienced to walk into a job, a career, starting a business, and being humble enough like you were when you were 12 years old to be able to make it a success or make yourself a success?
Yeah. I mean, I thought that everybody would want to hire me when I've kind of finished my career. So I had a very smart parent. So my mother told me that I need to study at the same time, that I cannot just put all eggs into the martial arts career. And she was right. I think the best tournament or the best money that I got was $300 for winning one tournament. So it didn't pay off enough in a way to be professionally living at that time. Maybe later on nowadays you can earn a lot of money if you're really, really good there, but a lot of great martial artists, they earn nothing. And then you have to have some backup plan. So I studied and then actually I was studying in Sweden and at the Gothenburg Graduate Business School there. So I wrote the best master's thesis. So I thought that I'm a world champion, best master's thesis, great grades from the schools. Nobody wanted to hire me. So I had to really start there and just like get any job. And then I thought that, okay, if I succeed in that, so I might have the skills, but I also understood that I didn't know anything about the professional life. So of course, sales was something that I noticed that people didn't want to do so much. So they maybe were afraid of those kind of asking people to buy. So then I thought that, okay, maybe that's the simplest way for me, that I didn't know sales either, but I thought I will learn, because in a way it's kind of same as fighting, that you meet an opponent or a person and then you try to influence that person to buy from you. So to me, there were a lot of similarities. And then I just started to study more and more of that. So I noticed also that if I put some extra effort that others are not doing, so step by step, I start succeeding. And again, I have to say that in the beginning, I was really bad in sales, but then I learned from the experience. And I thought that, okay, if I take today 20 calls, tomorrow 21, 22, 23, so every day I'll become better. And that was the reality in the end. And then when you start succeeding, so then life gets easier. And then with that self-confidence, you can advance in your career. And that's what happened to me.
Yeah. So, well, not everyone chooses to become good at sales and study to become good at sales. Was there a pivotal moment for you where you said you sucked at sales at the beginning, but then you just kept going? Was there a mentor? Was there someone there that, or was it just through osmosis of getting hit in the face enough times with the no that you really changed into being a poor salesman into a great one?
Yeah, but I mean, like I started in telesales, so that is hard. So you kind of you pick up the phone and you get lots of no's, and sometimes you even wish that hopefully the person doesn't even answer. But there was a nice crowd of people there. There was a nice team, so you got to listen to the others succeed. So then I was like asking that, what did you do differently? I asked for coaching, so I was used to that. So again, if you think of a martial arts or full contact fight, so of course you want help from your coach, right? So you don't want to enter the ring or octagon just to get beaten up. So you're very willing to learn from others and hear the best tips that they have. So I was used to that. So I started listening to others. I started asking questions. Then I asked, how do you develop yourself? So people were saying that they read books or attend courses. So I was asking which books, which courses, and just like try to get everything myself as well. So I was listening to podcasts and audiobooks and reading books, taking online courses, just to get everything there that people who had done it before, that what could I learn? And it wasn't easy, but I got kind of few tips, and then I noticed that I got better. And sometimes it's just like maybe a pep talk or self-confidence thing, that you kind of prepared yourself in the same way that you would prepare for a fight. So I still do today every day. So I start with meditation. I kind of start learning something new, and I stretch. So I test my body and mind that am I okay today, and what's my kind of condition. And with that condition, then I can continue and be better. And that's kind of the habit that I still have.
Oh, that's great. And you exhibited a lot of humility in asking for those tips, asking for those helps, which books, which courses, so that you can learn to get better. Was there a turning point in your career, or where you realized that the discipline you learned of martial arts could also become a framework for business leadership?
Well, I think then when I got kind of leadership position, so I noticed that, okay, that maybe again, kind of taking the fighter's mindset was that you were looking at your opponent in the eye constantly and trying to kind of sense what's the feeling that is the person afraid of you, or are they very confident? So I was kind of used to kind of try to read the people's emotions in the situation. And when I kind of got my first leadership position, so I noticed the same thing. Unfortunately, in the beginning, I was probably more in the mindset of a fighter. So I was kind of a very tough and try to demand that, hey, I know you're afraid, but you can do better. So I was maybe not working properly with the emotions that I was reading. But then I noticed that, okay, that I can actually help the same way as I was actually coaching others as well. So then I noticed that, hey, I can use the same tactics, help them to build routines, help them to build disciplined manures to kind of operate every day in their work. And that started to bring better results. So then I noticed, hey, wait, why would I change everything that I've been training for 15 years? And why don't I use the same things here? And then it started to pay off. So quite early already in my career, I noticed that, hey, these things that I'm doing are paying back very well. So just continue with that.
So you keyed on something there that's a really good trait, and it can be learned, but it seems to be one of the harder things to learn. You used your ability to read fighters in the ring in the office. So you learned, and because you had to, otherwise you risked getting hurt by getting hit in the face or otherwise, how to read a person's body language. And then you parlayed that to the office. If you could give some tips to those that may not feel as strong in that skill right now, what tips would you give them in being able to read others, reading a room, whatever it may be?
Yeah, I think I have this kind of the black belt in leadership course where I kind of coach people to understand that. So it always, in my opinion, starts with your own humbleness first. That if you can admit your mistakes, so kind of like be very honest that, hey, I might have said something that might have offended you, or I got a feeling that you're not feeling good at the moment. So you go back to these moments and talk to people and admit those. Then you start realizing how, and you can see how people's kind of reactions change, their feelings change. So they suddenly start maybe smiling more, or kind of their shoulders kind of relax or something. So when you yourself admit your mistakes first, so then you can see what's the kind of reaction with the others. Then you can start building with others and try to read emotions. So I always say that the leaders very seldom they train for this, but I advise a lot of people to train. And you can say that, hey, let's take a birthday gift for somebody who works for you, or you kind of keep the door open, or ask how they're doing on Monday morning, and so on. So you start seeing different reactions. So it's not only working at the office, but you can kind of start seeing how people feel when you are friendly to them. And then you can actually test the other way around, that when you are not friendly, and then try to observe what are the differences you can see from the face when people are more stressed and so on, and then just kind of build it up from there. It's the same in the fight, that you kind of first are very focused on yourself, and you need to control yourself before you can read the others. And often people observing see better than you in the fight. So sometimes it pays back to just observe people from outside and see how they're feeling, and just kind of build stories in your head that maybe they are stressed because they are thinking of their mortgage payments, or maybe they are super happy because they're waiting for the party on Friday. And then you can test and ask them, why are you smiling today? Is there something happening? And then you start be able to read people more and more on these moments. Maybe it's not that smart things, but maybe basics often pay off, right? So.
No, I think there's a lot to gain there. As you were talking, I was thinking about some of the habits I've developed over the years, which some people may think are weird, but I used to go to festivals, and some like music festival and whatever, and literally observe people.
Yeah.
I've been in restaurants, and my wife will think I'm off in a trance, but I'm observing body language at different tables. And just observing, like thinking what's going on in their conversation based on their body language. And those are just a couple simple hacks to get to know the difference in body language and how it plays out that a lot of people, I don't think, take the time to do.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I love watching with my wife some reality shows, and there is the same. And I mean, then during COVID, so we were watching soap operas. They are scripted. And then you can kind of see that when they do the scripting and everything, so you learn a lot of things if you just pay attention to different things. So maybe the tagline of it it's not that interesting, but when you see human interactions and see what happens, so you learn a lot of that. And then if you apply and take those skills to workplace, you suddenly see a different world. And the same kind of feelings that you were observing from TV are actually happening in real life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you've led organizations as different as Nordic Business Forum and Selfie Store. How do you adapt your leadership style across such diverse industries?
Yeah, to me, again, I kind of start with the white belt. So when I go, I kind of love that as well. So I feel that I need that kind of a challenge, that I kind of go for a new industry and need to learn, because then it's easier to kind of be humble in the beginning and ask questions and see what's happening. And often of course, these industries that I've been in, so I might have been a customer itself. So I've been a customer of Nordic Business Forum, and kind of the content is for leaders. So if I have attended other courses or conferences, so kind of the concept was same that I have understood and been a customer with. So easier to understand there. But to me, it's more like, again, even if you start as a leader and a CEO, so you can really start from the bottom and learn what the people are doing and the team is doing. So it helps me to kind of understand. And then I can start asking questions which actually make them often work harder or bring up new perspectives that they were not thinking before. Again, kind of like if you coach or something, so you can ask often people that, or you're finding yourself that did everything go the way you want it to go? And often the answer is no. And then you can just ask that, okay, why not? What would you have done better now if you knew the situation, or you could kind of live it through again? So what would you do differently? And these kind of questions help a lot especially when you're new to the industry. So you can ask these questions constantly, and then you build up your own knowledge. But also at the same time already you kind of make a difference in the team. And often people are happy when the leader is interested in what they are doing and asking their opinions. So then it's easier to lead in the future as well.
Yeah, actually, how you started that out, I want to also tell people, whether you're new to the industry or not, what Aslak said about starting as a white belt, I think is the way to approach your new leadership position. Is the way to operate through curiosity, to get to know your team, to get to know the product, whatever it may be. I took over a large financial firm from my father. I had worked in it for 13 years. It was 13 years before I took over. So I knew all the people. I had worked with them. But when I took over and changed from being a leader to the leader, there's a big difference in being a leader and the leader. And so when I was taking over as the leader, I did a lot of question asking of the veterans in the office, of the people that had helped shape the culture over the last 20, 30 years, and really got to know what they needed from me as a leader, what they expected from me as a leader, and just did a lot of interviews with them, even though I had been in that culture and worked with them for 13 years already. I wanted to approach it from that angle so that they knew that I wasn't just, riding my father's coattails or coming in and trying to demand a new way of being, that I need to understand their models, what motivated them, what they expect from leaders, so that I could fulfill those promises and expectations as well. So I don't think it's just starting in a new spot. I think when you become a leader, it's a good posture to take of the white belt mentality that Aslak was just referencing.
Yeah, I love that story, Josh. And I mean, I often say as well that the organization mostly knows what needs to be done. And if they tell you and you start with that, so they are on your side as well. Because often when you have a new leader, and I can imagine that when you took over from your father, so there must have been people who were thinking that you're maybe not qualified or good enough, and they might have had wishes that some of them might become the leader. And so in order to be able to be in control of the situation, so if you first start with the team that you have those small wins, support them, so suddenly they are on your side and everything gets easier.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's always going to be those feelings, and there's always going to be those doubts, whether you came from outside the organization, they don't know you from Adam, or if you've been in it for 13 years or whatever it may be, there's going to be something of that nature that goes on there. So, or feelings. So your best position or posture is to act with curiosity, to actually get to know them and help create wins like you mentioned as well. So really good stuff. At the Nordic Business Forum, you interviewed a couple big names, right?
Yeah,
maybe
sure.
A few, but former President Barack Obama, George Clooney, Steve Wozniak. From a broad perspective, what did you learn curating those conversations? Whether it was about leadership or what truly moves people.
Yeah, but I mean, with all those really, really big names, I think one thing that you sense is their kind of strong presence, that people will just notice them if they're walking. So it's so funny to see that in the conference, there are maybe almost 10,000 people, but you see them walking in the corridors when they come, and they kind of have that aura and the presence. And when they meet people, so they give full attention, and they're kind of so warm, and they feel like they are superstars, even if they're normal people. In the end, they eat the same food, they go to toilets and so on. But it's just, you can sense if these superstars, when they come, especially like if you have a president or like a Hollywood superstar. So they're really good with people, and when they talk in a way, so people listen to them. So of course people admire their background, but they're really skilled in these things as well, and they get people to listen to. They are really great communicators, how they use jokes and answers. So they are super good at that. And of course, like I almost envy them when you see them on stage and think that, oh, can it be so simple? But of course they are really professionals in that. But I mean, like everybody who's worked with them, so they are very happy to meet them, and they tend to show at least that they have time for everybody. If somebody just wants their autograph or something, they stop. So they just show that they are there for that person and make their days that they meet the people and so on. Yeah.
Well, it's good to hear, because I'm sure they were paid a handsome sum to be there. So they better appreciate the people that are there while they're getting paid to be there.
Sure.
Well, what was perhaps of those three listed, I'm probably more fascinated by Steve Wozniak, just because he's from the business side versus the political or acting side. Was there a big takeaway or something that you took from his persona or any of those personas that has stuck with you today in your leadership?
Yeah, but of course, like Steve Wozniak so he's super humble when he walks there. So he's almost like smiling if somebody's kind of carrying food for him or asking or opening the door. So he said, no, I want to do that. And funnily enough, my daughter, she was 8 at that time, and she was actually opening the conference, and she met Woz. And then I told her later on that when she loves iPhone, that did you actually understand that he's from Apple, co-founder of Apple? And she was like, no, she thought he was just a nice guy in the same green room. and so he is super humble and talking with everybody, and he likes to tell these stories. But I think one thing that, like his mindset on the early days of Apple, so I mean, that's just a tremendous story, like how they believed in things and how it was always, they were so much behind, and then they had maybe a trade fair where they needed to show new products, and he just made them happen. And Steve Jobs was pushing him a lot, like that, can you make this happen and so on. So, but I mean, his mindset, he's so curious to learn everything, and very humble person, and loves to tell stories. So he's a really great guy, and lots of learnings from there. Of course, he comes from very technical side. So he's talking about things that I don't always understand when he's mentioning of some technical advancements of, like, I mean, one story that stuck with me was that they had a chance to kind of walk in some corridor where they saw Microsoft Windows, or they thought they saw. So they saw a kind of a screen that, hey, there are actually 2 different screens there in one screen. So they are building something new. But then he thought that if Microsoft can do, they can do the same. And then they found out that it was a reflection of a mirror. So there was actually no 2 screens. But he thought, if Microsoft can do it, we can do it. And that's how they developed their kind of personal computers in to be better because they believe that if somebody else can do it, we can do. And sometimes even nobody had done it before, but they just copied the mindset and thinking. So, I mean, he was so curious of learning and developing these things. So I admire him from that side, but as a person, how humble he is. So very, very highly. He's a great person. Yeah.
So the split screen or screen mirroring came from a mirage, essentially.
Yeah, that's what he told. I wasn't. I don't know if I even lived that time, but that's what he was telling. That that's what happened.
That's awesome. And Woz was such a key focal point of that company. Jobs got all the publicity of it because he was the big visionary. But I tell my leadership teams that I meet with all the time that without Woz, they wouldn't have blown up the way they did. Not just from his technical expertise, but also Jobs really wanted to release the iPod, the iPhone, and the iPad at the same time. And it was Wozniak that had not only the technical expertise, but he also knew the market and what the team was capable of. And he put his foot down and said, no, we're doing the iPod first, and then the phone, and then the iPad. And it's about understanding your whole breadth of team, about the whole market. Whereas us visionaries, I point at myself because I'm a visionary like Jobs, we're just like, now let's do it all. We can do it all. Yeah. And it takes those integrator type personalities like Woz to slow us down and do things right, not just do it all.
Yeah, but at the same time, so Woz needed Jobs to push him to do these things.
That's absolutely right.
So he was saying many times as well that if there was no push from Jobs, so they would have done not so much. Of course, they were developing things, but Jobs was really pushing to kind of come up with something really unique and really great. And the timelines that Jobs pushed there to have the new product launches and everything. So without that, they would have never happened. So
that's right. That's why you need diversity in thought in that leadership room. You need those different personalities. Absolutely. So let's get to the black belt to leadership, or black belt in leadership, I should say. You talk about white belt to black belt roadmap for CEOs. We've talked about this in a couple different senses already today, but could you break down what that progression looks like in practice?
Yeah, sure. So to me, when I wrote the book, so I wasn't exactly sure the terminology and everything here, but then after the book and having some interviews and keynotes, I understood that I'm talking a bit about like instinct development. So of course, like we all have instincts of different settings in life. So we might feel sometimes that this is not going to happen, or I should be afraid of something, or kind of all these things come to our mind. So we are not exactly sure, like, okay, what should we react into? So that's why when I was writing the book and kind of thinking on the lessons learned, so there are 20 different lessons from the kind of dojo with examples from the dojo or fighting, and then how they're applicable in the real life of leadership. And I'm telling the stories from the leadership side as well. So the book itself is not only about the belts, but it has different lessons. But sometimes we are kind of going in to understand that what's the difference between a white belt and black belt as an example. So we often think that the black belt is the master who knows everything. And in martial arts, basically the black belt knows everything, but also understand that they know nothing. So that's where the learning starts. So basically it's more of like understanding the comprehensive levels of different techniques, maybe from being fit enough to be able to do these things. So sometimes you break bricks or you go into full contact fightings, which you need to be in good fitness level there to go. And with all these things, then you understand, okay, this is the world I'm living in. This is then the fighting skill. And I mean, the leaders, we need the same. We need different experiences. We need to understand that sometimes, I have a good example when I was first time laying off people. So I started with communicating clearly that it was 2008 when the financial crash came. So I was saying that, hey, the company's in this situation that we need to do something. And so I thought I was communicating well. So then I took people one by one into a room, and then I started firing people that I felt that are not good enough, and then asking the next one to come. And we used to have really great kind of atmosphere. We had Friday karaoke and everything together. And then after those, so we had about 25 people. So we were 16 left, 9 let go. And I said, well, let's arrange the party again and say to people that you are happy, you can continue here. And it was awkward. The feeling in the team was like that they didn't want to come. And I could see that the supervisors might have sang with me the karaoke, but I lost the whole feeling. The great feeling that we had in it before was totally lost. And I didn't understand what happened. I thought I did exactly what I was supposed to do. I communicated, I talked individually and all that, but I was a very cold person. I didn't care for the people. explain to people what was happening carefully enough. I didn't take them as human beings. So that's kind of is the white belt level is that, okay, you understand you did the thing that you were asked to do, but the level wasn't high enough. Later on, I understood. So in the latest ones, when I have had to lay off people, so I have even had kind of small liquor bottles with me in my suitcase there or on my back, so that if they say that they're going to drink, so I said, here's a drink for you. It never happened, but I'm prepared for those human feelings, and I prepare myself as well to understand that, hey, I try to talk myself out of laying off people, saying that, are you really sure you want to do? I might cry before the meeting so that I kind of get all the feelings out, and I can then confront the human beings as they are, talk honestly there, explain, take it in if they don't like it, and talk about the future and so on, so that there are so many different levels for the same situation. And I mean, the leaders, we should learn to think like this. So it's not laying off people. There are different levels of laying off people, and how you manage the situations depending on your kind of level that you are. Maybe as a black belt, you handle it better than
Oh, for sure. Out of curiosity, in your forms of martial arts, how long does it take to get from white belt to black belt?
Yeah, approximately 5 years training, and then you can get that. Of course, some might advance a bit quicker and some bit later. I think for me it took 5.5 years, from the start.
Okay, and that's for some disciplines it may be 10 years plus. Right.
Yes,
I know jiu-jitsu is very, very difficult to get those, and you go through the stripes and all that stuff that I don't necessarily understand. But from those that I've talked to, it can be 10 years plus. So it's really getting in, essentially 10,000 hours of practice, repetitions, getting hit in the face, like all those different things. And I'm using this as a metaphor because that's the same as being a leader or any other business skill set that you're trying to develop. It's going to take that practice and screwing things up the first time, or not doing things exactly right, or not recognizing those human emotions the first time. And now like fully understanding not only their emotions that they're having, but like you said, crying perhaps before the meeting so that you get your emotions out so that you can properly execute on the next meeting.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, great comment there that the martial arts takes long. And I mean, for leaders, and good to understand that, like we're saying that in many martial arts, of course, there are different styles of martial arts, but it includes the fighting part as well. So you don't learn that from any books or any courses. You just need to go to the ring and test yourself there. And many times, many leaders believe that they can learn from a book, or the others then believe that they don't need any training. They can learn it just by doing it, which is then also the opposite. So it's great to have a coach, maybe practice it and get the best advice from the best people, best leaders in the world, and then you become better. But you need to really go and lead people and take new experiences. And I don't think podcasting is the same, that every time I listen to my podcast where I'm as a guest or hosting myself, after that, I feel that it was never perfect. I made lots of mistakes, but still I get better. If I never did any podcast, so I wouldn't be able to talk the way I'm now talking. I believe every time I also get better, even if it's never perfect.
Yeah, that's exactly right. In fact, people have asked me if I listen to my podcast, and I always tell them that I do. My kids are surprised. They'll hop in my truck and be like, "Are you listening to yourself?" And I'm like, "Yes." Two reasons I do it. First is to see how I did, if I can get better. And secondly, I'm so engaged in this conversation that Aslak and I are having right now, I may miss some drops of wisdom, pearls of wisdom that he laid down, that if I didn't re-listen to it through, that I may not learn from him, because I'm focused on having this conversation, asking the next best question I possibly can ask to have as much of an impact on the audience as possible. So yes, I listen to every one of my podcasts to get better and to learn from the guest.
Yeah, there was a joke in my family when Spotify published the list that most listened podcast. So they were saying that it's going to be your own podcast, and it was there. So that I was listening. There were other podcasts as well. So I'm not only listening to myself and my own podcast, but like you were saying, that you learn lots from the guests, and sometimes when you're in a conversation, so you miss something, and yet then you learn and see how the conversation went. I do listen to other podcasts as well, but my own was the top one podcast of Spotify that I had listened to.
I can certainly say that mine wouldn't be the first place. I have one or two others that I listen to religiously, but it's not just to hear ourselves talk, it's to get better. So in the spirit of getting better, you had 100 full contact fights in the ring. That's not counting your training. That's not counting the fights you got into in the schoolyard. What I want to ask with this is how do you teach leaders to stay composed when they're not in the ring, but they feel like they're in the ring, like when that pressure is closing in on them? What are some of your lessons on how to help them stay composed?
That is a really good question. And I mean that it takes experience to be able to control yourself. So I mean, the first fight, so you might not even remember anything of them. The same goes with leaders, that they are not able to even kind of adapt to the situation. They go there as they have thought, and they might even forget what they were thinking and just act. So the first step is, of course, you need experience the same way as you need experience from the fighting, that you need to go into different positions. And you can train leadership also outside of your company. You can go for I work as a security guard sometimes just to collect money for my kids' hobbies, as an example, just to be there with people and just to get different experiences and see different situations. And sometimes I'm leading the security guard teams, and sometimes I'm just there on the ground, just doing the basic stuff. So the more experience you get, so more you can control yourself in the situation. And then there are many ways. So for instance, I train in a way that when I have high stress or high pressure, I'm thinking what to do. So I physically go to train somewhere really hard. I might go to run stairs and just push myself and kind of hear my thoughts that what's the moment when I start losing the focus, when I'm kind of losing the concentration, when my kind of excuses start to happen. It can be that, hey, you have a bit of flu, that don't push yourself too much, or your left knee is now in pain, or to remember that you didn't eat so well. And these are then coming, I call this a mental intelligence. I wrote in Forbes an article about that. So how to control these self-doubt moments and take them in as coaches, that, hey, this is the weak point of you. Now, what do you do with that? And then I run again and ask her, okay, now let's deal with that. And so then you learn to control those moments and physically and mentally and just push yourself through and be your person. So the fighter who is calm in the fight when they enter the ring, so they are well prepared, and that's what you send. So one of my favorite fighters was Anderson Silva as well. So he was so when he came there, so he was smiling and joking, and you could see that he's there ready. He didn't win all the fights, but you could see that he just loves there. The same goes with leaders, and when we were talking about this, even Steve Wozniak and others, so they know themselves, so they're super calm under the pressure. Of course, they've dealt with a lot of different situations, but experience brings you there. But also learning from this, when you push yourself to the limit. So I often advise leaders that, hey, try out something new that you don't think you can do. It may be that you arrange maybe a new event for your team, or push yourself kind of outside of your comfort zone just to learn how you behave when you're kind of losing your control. Then you can step back and kind of know that, okay, this is the level that I can control. And then you feel that when you're in control, you calm yourself down and the pressure doesn't feel that bad. So kind of those kind of tactics that they're doing. But I always advise people to have coaches that can help you, because sometimes when you're alone, so leaders and fighters are still alone in that moment. So it helps to have somebody on your side supporting you and kind of rooting for you. So I mean, it's a lonely place to be a leader, and if you don't have somebody rooting for you, so sometimes it kind of gets to you, and then you feel like, hey, I cannot do it. So to avoid those moments when you kind of give up.
Yeah. First of all, you got to root for yourself. And secondly, then having someone that has your back. I'm a leadership coach, and I have my own coaches as well. And I always tell people that are exploring coaching with me, if they're interviewing other coaches, I say, ask them if they have a coach, at least one. Because if they don't, that should be a red flag to you. If they think they've already arrived, that should be a red flag. But what you were saying about exercise and pushing yourself and all that different stuff, one of the things that stood out to me was becoming a scientist of yourself, right? Understanding when you screw up, or if you have a bodily reaction, like you were mentioning, understanding where did that come from, or why did I screw that up so badly? Like, how did I get to that point? Was my energy off? Like, asking yourself these series of questions that led you to this. What did they trigger something in me that's a hurt from my childhood that then I then reacted on them? Like, we have to become scientists of ourselves to continue to get better as a leader, and that's how you were laying that out was really brilliant.
Yeah, I love that, and I really love the concept. I have to use that. I didn't know that. Kind of think of as a scientist, but yeah, we talk about self-awareness, but I love the scientist more because there are also other things that you are aware of what you're doing, but you need to also understand the background, that it can come from anywhere that you have there. And sometimes you push yourself to the situations which is too much for you, which is totally fine as well. And sometimes you might even burn out or something. So as long as you recover from that, so there are lots of learnings during that path, and then avoid the mistakes you did there, and just try to build more stronger foundation. So I'm a lot of leaders, so I say that we are not fit enough. So we just like so demanding job that we spend 10 hours, 12 hours at work and very high stress coming. So if you're not physically fit, so your body just cannot take it. And then when your body cannot take it, so then your mind cannot take it anymore.
That's right. Physically fit, mentally fit, emotionally fit. It's what we have. Yeah. It's what we're called to be as leaders. And the scientist piece comes in because there is no learning without reflective learning. And the reflection is where the scientist comes in and really question our beliefs, really question our behaviors, and understand how do we become better, because that should always be the goal. We're never going to be perfect. We should always just be striving to get better.
Very true.
So many leaders chase inspiration, but neglect discipline. How do you convince ambitious people that systems and habits matter more than their motivation or inspiration?
Yeah, a really, really good question. And of course, like it can be the connotation of understanding what those words mean. But to me, like with discipline, you build success. So again, martial arts is a kind of a great metaphor to understand that you will never be a world champion if you don't show up to training every day. And then I challenge people to understand that if I told you, Josh, that in 6 months you're going to fight your first professional fight, so you would go to the gym every day. And it's not about that you have even motivation to go. You just know that you need to go. Otherwise, it's going to hurt. So kind of like really understand that the discipline means that you're going to show up every day to do those things that you need to do. It's great if you have motivation. It feels better. But if you don't do those things, you're going to be screwed. So to me, it always starts from that. So, okay, what's your goal, where you want to go for, what needs to happen? I love this Keith Cunningham. He has this 4-day MBA, and he lives in Texas. So he's one of his best questions is what would need to happen? So if you look at six months ahead, so what would need to happen that from this point I would get there? And then it's about discipline of doing that things. The motivation means that, of course, you're doing things that you like, but sometimes, training for a full contact fight, it doesn't feel always good, but you just know that more you sweat in the training, so less you bleed in the ring, right? So I think Muhammad Ali said that there. So kind of like it's not a trade-off. You just have to do that. And when you kind of don't question why, you just understand what you need to do. So you are on the right path. But of course, you need motivation. And maybe it comes to the vision. So when I started to train martial arts, so of course, my dream was to get black belt someday. My dream was to win fights. But it doesn't happen immediately. But then if you have that dream, you have that vision, so you have motivation to thrive through those kind of painful moments and the hardships that you endure during the time. You might get injured and you just have to come back. So there you need motivation. So to me, motivation is more on those kind of bigger setbacks where you just have to question yourself that do I have motivation to continue or not? And then discipline is what you do every day, constantly. And I'm not sure, but I feel that many kind of do just the opposite. They ask every day that do I want to do this? So talking about motivation rather than discipline. And then they try to push the hardships over with discipline, which is just the opposite what I'm talking about here.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And actually, there's a huge amount of humility that comes in there as well. I was listening to one of my regular podcasts that I listen to, and he was talking about how Conor McGregor comes off as extremely arrogant. And first of all, he made the point that he was playing a character, and he probably played the best character that the UFC has ever seen. because he made the most money in the UFC that anyone's ever seen. That being said, he made this brilliant point of how much humility it took to get to where he got. The discipline, the training sessions, all the stuff that happened before he was ever known worldwide, how much discipline that took, meaning how much humility to lean into coaches and training and all that stuff. And that's the stuff people don't see. They just see this brash, braggadocious, arrogant character on TV and don't think about what it took to get there and how much humility it actually took to get to that spot.
Yeah. And I mean, humbleness is sometimes, I understand, and it's hard because there's no guarantee that you will succeed. But if you're not humble and willing to work hard, so success is not coming, right? So I mean, those are great examples, and we miss those stories. And of course, still it's a show, the UFC as well. So that Conor sold most of pay-per-views as well because people were interested in seeing him fighting and maybe even wishing him to lose or win.
Yeah.
But that's how he made the money. But anyways, he wouldn't got to the money if he wasn't disciplined to train and humble enough to kind of go through. And he lived with no money for a long, long time. And I think when he got to the UFC, so he got the fighter, what's the fighter of the night or the fight of the night promotion, $50,000. And with that money, he kind of afforded to pay his rent in the beginning.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, that's what the people don't realize. Like, if he was shitty, if he didn't have the discipline, if he didn't put in the work, if he didn't have the humility, no one would even care or know him, and no one would have bought the pay-per-views that they bought to see him, whether they hated him or loved him.
Yeah.
So that's the stuff that people don't see. Well, let's wrap up here with legacy. In your view, what separates leaders who last decades from those who burn out after a few intense years?
A tough question. So I personally haven't really burnt out ever, but I've had this kind of like block moments that I feel that I'm stuck. But then I've stopped that. So I'm kind of understanding. So I have to say that I believe that the person who burns out has kind of lost us maybe the self-awareness of what you were talking, kind of like understand as a scientist, like what's happening and stop it before that happens. And maybe let go of some things and stressful moments, that admitting that, hey, I will not succeed with this path. I need to change something. So maybe there's something that so those who kind of overburden their mind and body for too long and get stuck and maybe are not innovative enough to find new ways of working, or they don't trust the team enough in a way that they can maybe empower the team to do some stuff or make changes. So maybe kind of when your mind gets rigid and you just continue with that and the stress kind of amplifies constantly. So then you get to the moment where you burn out.
Yeah, that's really good. It's keeping that eye on the prize. What did you get into this to begin with? Why did you start down this path? What is the vision, and understanding that it's your calling, and there's going to be a lot of trials and tribulations along the way. It's keeping your eyes on the prize to make sure, because I think a lot of times when people lose that singular focus on why they're doing what they're doing, it can become very demotivating. And if you let that spiral, that's where the burnout comes from.
Yeah. I mean, anyways, in a career, it's easy to change jobs in the end. So of course, if you have your family company, so it might not be that easy. But anyways, if you feel stuck, so just change the company, take a year off or do something else so you can always be in control of the situation. You don't need to be there. I understand that we need to earn money, but there are many different ways to earn money as well. And maybe the quality of life can go down for a while if you need that break. So, I mean, have that self-awareness that if you're kind of going to the wrong direction, so it's only you can stop it. So you need to be reacting to it and think through, like you were saying, that keep your focus and the vision and your dreams, that remind yourself what were there in the beginning. So, yeah.
Yeah. One of my last questions I had for you is, you've led and coached and keynoted across 10 plus countries now, which is awesome. Okay. If you could distill your message to one universal truth about leadership, what would it be? That's a tough one. I mean, now I say that I'm borrowing Peter Hinsen's terminology, that we are entering to the kind of the never normal world, where
the old leadership lessons, they are all valid, but they kind of situations change so drastically constantly, with AI to political problems to environmental issues to wars. Everything is happening. So what worked today might not work tomorrow. So to me, I'm coming to the zone in a way in my thinking that leaders are like fighters, that you just need to be prepared for anything, study everything and prepared for anything, but also understanding and that you cannot control everything. So, yeah.
So would the word potentially be adaptability?
Yes, adaptability for sure. Yeah. But I kind of want to include there's this understanding that you just need to get better so you can adapt into more different situations. So as a fighter, for instance, so I wasn't good in grappling, for instance, so I was more stand-up fighter. So in order for me to be a really good adaptable fighter, so I needed to learn grappling well enough so that I can adapt to the situation. So if I didn't wrestle and grapple enough, so I wouldn't be able to adapt. So I mean, training to become better is needed to be able to be adaptable in the future.
Yeah, it's interesting. It actually, going back to the UFC example, kind of reminds me of Ronda Rousey. Like, she dominated with her submissions. And I remember watching the fight clear as day when she faced Holly Holm. And Holly was known as a striker, a boxer. And Ronda couldn't get her down, and Holly beat her up. And I'm not sure Ronda won another fight after that. I think Holly exposed her. And she was so dominant for a period of time, but very briefly. And as soon as she was exposed for her lack of striking and stand-up skills, it was over for her. So that's a really good point to end there. My last question I ask everyone, Aslak, is what's an unpopular belief you hold to be true that you believe most others would disagree with you on?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Can be on anything.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure if this is unpopular, but let's put it this way: that the leaders succeed because of the team. So in the end, it's still about the team. They're not about the leader. Of course, you have influence on the team, and it's your job to get most out of the team. But without a good team, you have no chance to succeed.
I don't know if it's unpopular either, but it should be. Well, here's what I'm going to say. It's such a great point, because we see a lot of egotistical leaders that want to take the credit. And at the end of the day, you're not doing anything without a team. I'm not doing this podcast today without a team, because I wouldn't even know how to turn these cameras on. So it's the function of making sure that you're giving credit to the team, understanding at the end of the day, your legacy is going to be far beyond that goal or that revenue or whatever it may be. So it's a great point to end on. So how can the Spartan audience follow you, connect with you? What's the best methods of doing so?
Yeah, I'm the only Aslak de Silva in the world. So if you Google my name, you'll find me. I'm quite active on LinkedIn. And then please check out my website, theblackbeltinleadership.com. So there I share some of these kind of lessons learned. So there's also an assessment that you can take a test and see what kind of a leader you are, whether you are a Shaolin monk kind of leader who prefers to kind of train with the form or maybe you are a mixed martial artist kind of a leader who is like ready to fight and lead anytime, but maybe not with the traditional way. You just want to learn new stuff all the time.
Oh, that's great. Well, Spartans, you know what to do. Follow Aslak. Thank you so much for taking the time. Now you can rest up and get to bed after this. Appreciate you, brother, taking the time today. Spartans, you know what to do. Share this episode far and wide. Remember that good and great are the enemies of possible. Lead like a Spartan today.
This is Sparta!